What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? Today we're sitting down with Mike from the Black Sofa Vlogs channel. Is that correct, Mike?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, we're sitting down with Mike here. We're going to be talking about his religious past and what it was like for him growing up with religion, and then how he finally left religion and what that transition looked like. So, if you're interested in hearing Mike's story, then please stay tuned. All right, so Mike, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing good, thanks. Yeah, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I mean, it's afternoon here. I think it's a little bit later for you, but doing pretty good. Been a busy day.
Yeah, it's been quite a busy day for me as well. My wife was competing in the Leeds 10K this morning, and she did amazingly well. And then in the afternoon, I I was at work at a coffee shop. So yeah, it's been quite a busy day for me as well.
Well, yeah, I have to say, commend your wife on doing a 10K, because I could barely jog down my little road to my apartment.
Yeah, so now I'm just enjoying a nice beer.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a very big fan of beer. But now, let's get on into like what was your relationship with religion in the past? Like, were you religious when you grew up, or what was that like?
Well, I when I it's a bit weird because when I grew up as a child. Um, Now, my mum and dad, they weren't really that religious, but nevertheless, they sent us to Sunday school and to the local Methodist church. So I guess I had sort of a Methodist upbringing. Um, but then I grew out of religion um, when I was about 12, 13, I think. And I considered myself an atheist. Um, But then I met, when I was about 25, I met a Christian and we became friends, and we had many discussions about faith and religion uh, and all the rest of it. And she persuaded me to do something called an Alpha course. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, what's that?
An Alpha course is It's a free course. It's about a 13-week course, and every week there's a different topic, like who is Jesus? Why did Jesus have to die? Um, what does the Bible teach about healing? Uh, why is there suffering in the world? So each week there's a different topic, and you get to ask questions afterwards. And their tagline is basically no question is considered to be stupid, or no question is considered to be too hostile. And you get a meal into the bargain. You get a free meal, so I thought, well, why not? And the it the peak, if you like, of the course is the Holy Spirit Day, where you learn all about the Holy Spirit. And then at the end of it, you get an opportunity to be filled with the Holy Spirit and give your life to Christ. And I was, totally up for that. And by then, and so I went forward for prayer, and I gave my life to Christ, and I got filled, as I thought then, with the Holy Spirit. And I was a Christian, born again, spirit filled, speaking in tongues, and the whole 9 yards. And I was a Christian for about 15 years.
Oh,
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, wow. Like, I guess that's the reborn. I guess a Christian is that what that's called?
Yeah, born again.
Born again. That's right.
Yeah, and I at first I attended the Anglican church, where I did the Alpha course. Um, but I wanted a more spiritual um, expression of Christianity, if you like. And I heard about this church, this this wacky kind of, or kind of more happy clappy kind of a church that met in a cafe. Um, so I started attending their services, and at this time I didn't know anything about different denominations, and I just knew the Methodist Church and the Anglican Church and the Baptist Church, and that's all I knew. I didn't know about Pentecostalism or anything like that. But they were very spiritual in their expression of worship. Talking in tongues was encouraged a lot more, and prayer with the laying on of hands, and you know, praying for healing and singing in tongues and swooning in the spirit, and and it was all very exciting for me, and so I started attending that church, and I later found out that they were Pentecostal, and the name of the denomination was the Assemblies of God, which coincidentally is the same denomination that Godless Iowan was part of. Um, so that's that's one thing that we have in common. um, and but they took the Bible very literally, um, and they were young Earth creationists, and I totally took the Kool-Aid, and I got really deeply into it, and I and I genuinely felt that God was calling me into some kind of full-time ministry, and round about that time, I was working for the local council. I was working for Job Centre Plus, as a IT support, as an IT support guy, and but we were getting laid off basically, and they centralised the IT support to Newcastle. So instead of my colleagues, instead of phoning me and asking me to just go downstairs or whatever to help them, they would have to phone a help desk in Newcastle, miles away, and they would try to help them over the phone. It was a crazy situation. But anyway, I knew that I was going to be laid off sooner or later. So I thought, well, this is a window of opportunity that God has given me to attend Bible college. So I attended Bible college, and because I was part of the Assemblies of God, it made sense for me to go to the Assemblies of God Bible College. And so I thought, what can go wrong? They'll just all they'll do is just affirm what I already believe. But no, we got challenged at Bible college. It was at Bible college that I learned how to read the Bible critically, and study it objectively, taking historical context into account, and I learned Greek and Hebrew and a bit of Latin, and it was at Bible college that I learned that the fourth gospel, John's gospel, was not was not necessarily written by John. It wasn't to be taken historically. It was just a spiritual or theological gospel. And it was also at Bible college that I learned about the quest for the historical Jesus, and how the historical Jesus is not necessarily the Christ the same as the Christ that we read about in the Gospels.
Mm-hmm.
And so, seeds of doubts, got planted, in my mind. So I think at Bible college is when I really started having serious doubts. And but I think at the time I swept most of them under the carpet. And but what happened? What I wasn't prepared for was a mental health crisis, which happened towards the end of 2013. I had lived with depression and anxiety for most of my adult life. And before I was a Christian, I would feel suicidal. But after I was born again, I was no longer. I would still get bouts of depression, but it never got to the stage where I was suicidal, because of course I had the joy of the Lord. I had the hope of heaven and all the rest of it. And I genuinely believed that God would never test me beyond what I could bear. But what happened was, I had a severe bout of depression and anxiety, and I felt suicidal. I thought, this can't be right. I'm a Christian, born again, spirit-filled, filled with the joy of the Lord. I shouldn't be feeling suicidal. God shouldn't be testing me beyond what I could bear, but He is, and I begged Him to take the depression and anxiety away. I begged Him, I spent time on my knees in fervent prayer, praying in tongues, pacing up and down, casting out demons, and singing in tongues, but to no avail. And I felt that God had abandoned me, just when I needed Him the most. And I found that I couldn't sweep these doubts and questions that I had under the carpet anymore. I couldn't ignore them. And I began to do my own research. And I began to follow atheists on Twitter. I think one of the first atheists I followed on Twitter was Godless Mom.
Mm.
And I interacted with her a few times, but I found that when I thought about answers to her objections and thought about how she would respond, I thought, no, that's not going to wash. That's not going to wash. That's not going to. She's not going to accept that, and I knew why. I knew why she wouldn't accept my answers, because I knew deep down that they were unsatisfactory, and so. And I started watching other atheists on YouTube. People like the Amazing Atheists. Of course, I watched Godless Mom, Logic, and Logic is the one who finally got me off young Earth creationism. I mean, I already had my doubts about young Earth creationism but he, especially his series on Kent Hovind, he had a very good way of showing Kent Hovind's arguments up for what they were, and I thought, yeah, he's vocalizing really, he's been really articulately vocalizing what, the doubts that I already have, and so, and also around about that time I read, I think, The Greatest Show on Earth by Dawkins.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, I can't accept New Earth creationism anymore. And at first, I became an Old Earth creationist. I believed that God. I accepted evolution, but I believe that God kick-started the Big Bang, if you like, and then guided the evolutionary process. But then I think, but also because I started reading the Bible without my Christian lenses, and read it objectively, I started to realize that actually the Yahweh is a monster. And so, and when I tried to bring this up with my fellow Christians, they would just say, "Oh, that's just the depression talking." Don't dwell on these things. You shouldn't dwell on these things. You'll just make yourself worse. Just focus on the good things about Christianity and the Bible. And but I couldn't. I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so first of all, I ditched the Old Testament. Okay, I just won't have anything to do with Yahweh. He's a monster. I'll just follow Jesus. But then I thought, I reasoned that since Jesus is God, part of the Godhead, he's God the Son in the the triune, God, Godhead. He's just as bad as Yahweh. He is Yahweh. He and Yahweh are the same. So Jesus has to take responsibility for everything that Yahweh did in the Old Testament. He flooded the earth. He commanded Moses to commit genocide and ethnic cleansing. Just as surely as Yahweh did. So in the end, I ditched the New Testament as well, and eventually I ditched faith altogether, because I remember at that time, every morning I'd wake up praying, Lord, like Jairus, the synagogue ruler, who Jesus supposedly, rose his daughter, from the dead. He said, Jairus said to Jesus, I do believe. Help me in my unbelief. And so every morning I pray the same thing. Jesus, I want to believe. Help me in my unbelief. But it became like a mantra. And one morning I woke up with the thought, you're not there, are you, Lord? You never were. And that was that. I never prayed again. Not seriously anyway. And it took me a while to admit to myself that I was an atheist. I called myself a skeptic. I didn't really, but eventually I thought, yeah, I'm an atheist. That's it. I'm done. And I haven't looked back.
What would you say that was a pretty big hurdle to get over, like admitting you were an atheist?
Well, yeah, because I think what held me back, two things. firstly, the fear of hell, because I was so indoctrinated. The idea of hell was so deeply ingrained in my mind. I didn't want to, I thought, well, what if I'm wrong? What if it is the depression, playing tricks on my mind or whatever, and I end up, I wind up in hell. I don't want to go to hell. And so I would often pray, Lord, please forgive me. I don't want to go to hell. But then the next morning, I have clarity again, and I think no, it's bollocks. And but also I could still speak in tongues, and I thought, well, if I could still speak in tongues, then maybe that means the Holy Spirit is still within me, and maybe I'm still, maybe he is real after all. But then what helped me with that was I read an article. I think it was by Godless mom, actually. No, I think it was a link in one of her articles to another article that someone else had written, and it was all about how speaking in tongues is, can be learnt behaviour, because experiments have been done with people of different faiths and people of no faith, where they have learnt to speak in tongues from hearing other people speak in tongues, even though they either don't believe in the Christian God or they don't believe in God whatsoever. They hear people speaking in tongues, and they start speaking in tongues as well. And I learnt about dopamine, the power of dopamine, and oxytocin and other neurotransmitters and adrenaline, and the influence of emotional worship music, and how in a group situation everyone's emotional, everyone's singing in tongues, speaking in tongues, and so you start doing it as well. And so that helped me to realize that speaking in tongues is not something supernatural; it's perfectly natural. And eventually I stopped fearing hell as well, because I knew that it was just that the Bible was just written by flawed human beings and not inspired by God. And so I reasoned that hell wasn't real, and eventually I became less and less scared of it.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you did. Me, like, I never really connected to my religion like a lot of people did, because I guess I never really bought into it literally like that. So, but I'm glad that you eventually, let go of that fear, though.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad as well, because it held me back. But yeah, I'm glad. But I'm just so glad I don't have that fear anymore.
Yeah.